Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are looking at a Monday night slate here. We got 3 games for you guys, a couple teams trying to close out, including Nate's Celtics with a big win in Game 3. They are Game 4 and the game that we will kick off this slate with, as they are the first game on the slate tonight. Make sure you do like and subscribe to that page. We are bringing you each and every single game video throughout these NBA playoffs. We are also bringing you that player props video as well, so continue to follow along with us and head to thelines.com as well. Make sure you're using our odds checker there, shopping those lines for the best juice available on all the bets you want to make tonight in these playoffs. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to ftpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's jump into it.
Yeah, stunningly, the Celtics open as underdogs here at Brooklyn after just completely controlling Game 3, just plus 1.5, and the money line pretty even at plus 100 there. Totals at 220 after the teams only got to 212 in Game 3. Then we have Raptors plus 7.5 at Philly. I'm also surprised at the size of that spread with Joel Embiid hurt. Very, very, very much hurt, playing with a torn ligament in his thumb, not just a little nick. So that's a big spread for a feisty Toronto team that just won at home. And totals 210 there. Those games have been going way under lately. And then the Jazz plus 3 at the Mavericks after squeaking one out in Luka's return. That's an interesting game to watch. The always pivotal Game 5 out there. Yeah, some team will eventually come back from 3-0 down. It is not going to be this Brooklyn Nets team. I'm almost certain of that. I mean, it's more that it's not going to – you're not going to punk these Celtics. They just seem so unflappable. It's just from the time of Game 1, the winner there, the unselfish play, to Game 3 and Game 2, just not waffling at all down the stretch. You're just seeing the passing of the torch in front of our eyes, pretty much. If you were, I think it was a GM was quoted as saying, if you were just dropped into this league and you didn't know any history, you would look at Tatum and Durant and be like, wow, Tatum's way better than that guy. Like he's the better player at this point. And Durant is the guy who, up until these playoffs, we were saying is the best player in the world. And the Celtics have a ton more depth behind that. Just having Jason Tatum, some comical mismatches down the stretch for Jaylen Brown, who, on the broadcast, they say, if you were going to walk into the stadium and know you're going to be guarded by Patty Mills, Seth Curry, and Blake Griffin tonight, you're going to think you're going to have a pretty good night if you're Jaylen Brown. And indeed, He just closed the game with a flurry of moves. Blake Griffin thrown out there as sort of a desperation flail, and he hit a couple threes, which is great. Just love seeing the effort he gave and how red his face was trying to play NBA defense for the first time in 3 months against those two guys. So really, I'm looking past this game. I think the Celtics are getting value at minus 105 for sure, having been the better team in 2 consecutive games by a wide margin. I would look at Celtics futures at this point, and our editor-in-chief, Brett Carlson, did jump on that when 538 had them, said, back in early February, I think, 538 projected them as most likely to win the championship. They were still about plus 3,000 at most books to win it all, and nobody really bought that. They were like, come on, 538. They're having a good stretch here, especially Celtics fans who are scarred from how dysfunctional they were last year and into this year, and the whole Kyrie scar of that, all that. But this team is, I dare you to name me a team playing better basketball at this point, or a team that is scarier on both ends of the floor. I do think Miami is the only team that could beat them. And I think, if they can avoid Miami, I don't think they're going to, though. I think that's going to be a hell of an Eastern Conference Finals if they get past the Bucks. But plus 460 for the C's to win the chip. And I don't know if you would hedge it with Miami at this point, because I'm thinking that they would be in the finals if not for the C's. I am getting a little ahead of my skis here, but I'll let you talk about Game 3 a little bit as I dream about hanging Banner 18 at some point down the road.
Yeah, and I'm not. Ain't nobody mad at you, man. I mean, you're not even being ridiculous. I mean, that was literally, I was texting with you and Mo Nawara, senior writer at thelines.com as well, about, I put a bet on Brooklyn to be winning at the end of the first quarter, and I put one on them to be winning at the end of the first half before the game started. They were up 12-2 to start the game. Then they didn't win either of those bets. They lost the first quarter 30-25. They lost the second quarter by about the same. So they were down at half is the point. And that was when I started to go, oh, okay, never mind. F this. I'll just put a bet on Jason Tatum to be MVP of the finals at this point, because I think the C's are going to the finals. I'm getting ahead of myself there too with you, because I also, I have a bet earlier in the season on Miami at plus 850 to win the Eastern Conference, and I also have a bet with the Bucks that I hit a while back as well for them to be those Eastern Conference champs. So I don't know if I want to hedge either of those with the C's, where their odds are at plus 150 at this point, like you said, or I'm sorry, plus 135 on DK to be the Eastern Conference winner, because there is nobody that I could tell you that's playing better than the Celtics, and it's been that way since January. To be honest, the Timberwolves are the only other team that seem to be playing that well for that long. Although we are recording this on Sunday, where we both watched Milwaukee just handle the Bulls, even though it actually was not even as close as the final score, to be honest with you. And so there's another team to be scared of, to be honest. But the defense from the Celtics is where you start, right? It's not that complicated. The passing of the torch that you're talking about is not just from the standpoint of Tatum is one of the best offensive players. He's a freak in terms of being close to 7 feet tall and having the ball skills and handling and shooting that he does. Very reminiscent of Kevin Durant. It's not just the offense, it's the defense, and it's directly him guarding Durant, which he did for 8+ minutes in Game 3 there that they won, about 8.5 minutes. Like I said, he scored 2 points in those 8.5 minutes. And that was just from the free throw line, 3 turnovers in that time span. He did have 2 assists, but, over from 3. So, Tatum is the prototype for how if you're going to have an alien like KD on one side of the ball, you need an alien to stop him on the other side of the ball. And Jason Tatum has bought in on the defensive end in a way that's super impressive. I also love the fact that, I did remember him having good games, even in his earlier years where he was 22 years old playing in the playoffs in Eastern Conference Finals. And in closeout games, actually, if you look at his last 4 or 3 even closeout games dating back to when, a couple of seasons ago, we're talking 28, 29, and 29 points. He's averaging 29 points, 12 or 13 boards, and 6 assists in that time frame. So I am considering the 43.5 PRA for him in this game. I told you I was looking for ways to figure out how to bet Tatum because I really want to. 31.5 points will always be, will make me hesitant. But he does have a 31, 39, and then that 18-point game in Game 2 where, they were also able to rely on Jalen. And like you said, on the other side of the ball, Jalen playing offense has Seth Curry guarding him for 6.5 minutes in this game. The guy who guarded him the most is Seth Curry, followed by Kyrie Irving, followed by KD, followed by Patty Mills. So, yeah, they don't have anybody to hang with Jalen, and especially in that fourth quarter, he's going to continue to go to work. So you could consider him as well. I think in this game, I do kind of feel a bit of an under as well, just because I do, like I said, I think that the Celtics defense, it's not going anywhere, man. It's not going to change, and it's not going to lessen in intensity. It's also not going to get worse once you start once you add Time Lord and company into this squad. So, they could very well be championship bound. I don't currently have a bet on them. I got to see if it's worth it for me to do that at this point and figure out how I might. Because like I was saying, when I was talking to you and Mo, I lost those bets in the first half and the first quarter. And then I go, all right, screw it. I'm laying a bet on the Celtics to win the finals, maybe with Jason Tatum as the MVP, so I can get a bit more juice, since that's the most likely scenario if they do win the finals. Yeah,
I'm saying right here on air, barring some sort of injury, the Eastern Conference champion is going to win the championship. So don't chicken out and bet some plus 130 half-ass win the Eastern Conference. Bet them to win it all, man. The Celtics can shut down the Warriors. The Suns they got there and come up short. And there's no other team in the West that you look at and you're like, they're playing great right now. To be honest, Minnesota, not it for me. But going back to the Celtics defense and Rob Williams, even though he only played 16 minutes, definitely made an impact in those minutes and will continue to ramp up. They're 21-3 with a 104 defensive rating with Rob in the lineup since the end of January. Just incredible numbers. I mean, they just took it's not just how they won, it's the way they won in game 3, just taking the Nets' heart, or really just taking their lunch money, I guess. Like 37 points off turnovers. I didn't even know that was a thing that could happen in the playoff game. 25 fast break points, and the Nets just fumbling the ball every which way. It was ugly. It's been a debacle these last 2 games, and the Nets are posting a 124 defensive rating on the other end. Kyrie and KD both shooting under 35%. And they have in the fourth quarter in particular. I mean, we thought they'd come out strong again, like they did in game 2, with some desperation. It doesn't matter if they come out strong and they take an early lead, because Boston is wearing them down. They have so much more depth, and they have such a better team scheme where they don't need to rely on 2 guys as much. So they have more energy in the fourth. And that's why Brooklyn has a negative 18 net rating and a 132 defensive rating these last 2 fourth quarters. They're not closing. Yeah. Boston said themselves they were concerned about their ability to close games, and just that game 1, that serendipity of winning game 1 in that fashion, in such an unlikely way in a close game, really, I think, sparked them to gain that confidence now. And Ime Udoka is just exuding confidence. I just don't. I don't see any let up with what you said. Like, their defense is not going to let up. They would revel in a sweep here. I think that was the last question they asked Tatum, and he tried to hold back a smile as he walked away. Like, nope, there's one game at a time. But he would love to sweep this team. They would love to stick it to Kyrie Irving and the Nets, the team that knocked them out in 5 last year. And apparently Ben Simmons, who we get once again 12:30 into the show, Josh, have not mentioned that Ben Simmons is once again backing out of playing at all, because it's 3-0 down now, and I mean, it's a high pressure spot for him to come into, but he will not play, and that doesn't really do a lot for morale for the Nets to say, oh, okay, we have somebody who might be willing to help us, but he doesn't really think we have a shot to come back in this series. So, wave the white flag, and hopefully, I mean, I'd love to see another game in this series. I'd love to see them close it out in Boston, but I just don't trust the Nets to win at all.
Yeah, I don't either. They sucked any confidence I had in them completely out of me when they couldn't even win, a first quarter or first half with their backs completely against the wall. That was a must-win game, as we know. And that lack of defense, man, that's a problem that's not going anywhere. This is what we talk about. The team, there's been like one team, and it was the 2017 Warriors, that was outside the top 10 in defense in the last 20 years, that won a championship. And it was because they had Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson on one team with fully healthy Iggy and Draymond. Probably the best offense we've ever seen. That's definitely since I've been watching basketball, for sure, in 30 years or so. So, that defense didn't need to be what you need this year. And in terms of a net rating as well for the Celtics, they're now showing that they can just win in a variety of ways. That Derek White trade is proving to be helpful, despite the stats that he's filling up. You have, really a third guy outside the top 2. And I know Marcus Smart can do things as well. Off the dribble, he's a great ball handler, but you feel a lot better about Marcus Smart sort of spotting up and not necessarily needing to break players down as a crucial part of this offense when you get to some of the second unit stuff, et cetera, when you don't have one of the 2 Jalen or Jason's on the floor. They're just, their offense is now equally as lethal as their defense, as they do have 118 offensive rating at this point, including a stinker, to be honest, in a game that they still won. That was a defensive struggle in that game too there. So moving on here, Nate, to another Eastern Conference game on Monday night. The other one, we have a 3-1 series lead for Philly over Toronto, as Toronto did win that game 4 there. So we are headed to Philly game 5. We do have a bit of conversation here in terms of Embiid's health, right? That was a bit of a problem with that thumb that you mentioned at the top of the show with the lines there mentioning how Embiid's talking about a sprained ligament, torn. Either way, we've got some issues, or at least something to monitor there. Do you think that the 76ers can still close this game out with either no Embiid or likely, an Embiid that will be playing at least somewhat limited?
Maybe, but I don't really think they're going to cover 7.5 points.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be all over that if you see that up right now, and consider using it in some teasers for maybe 11.5 points for the Raptors. I don't think they're going down easy, man. The Raptors have played this team tough. I know they were blown out in games 1 and 2, but that's because they had to dedicate so many resources to Embiid, who is now not going to be the same player. Yeah, it's a torn ligament in his shooting thumb, I think, and he was. After, dropping 31 plus in 3 straight games without Scotty Barnes in the lineup for the Raptors, he had 21 on 7 for 16 field goal shooting. Scotty did play 26 minutes, definitely was not full strength, but gave him another body to throw at Embiid. And he's wearing down now. I think, this is the second straight year. Didn't he play through a torn meniscus last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, throwing his toughness on the line, definitely throwing his weight around to try and keep his team going here. But I mean, this is on James Harden now, for the most part. And that's a scary thought if you are the 76ers and their organization, to say, oh, we've got the most notable playoff underperformer and a coach that has twice blown 3-1 leads, trying to not become the first to give up a 3-0 lead in playoff history. Doc Rivers now is 6-20 in his last 26 closeout games. I mean, I think he's a fine coach. I think Harden's actually played pretty well in his last few closeout games, and I'm taking him in player props, mostly because I think he's going to have to pick up the slack with Embiid not able to do what he's usually done. That being said, yeah, I mean, Toronto does a lot of things that give this team problems, mainly just hustles. And in game 3, Philly got out-rebounded by nearly 16. They were out-rebounded by 16 when they hosted Toronto in March, scored just 88 points. And they gave up 20 offensive rebounds to give up that 16 rebound discrepancy. And that was without OG Anunoby and Fred VanVleet. Toronto won that game. Toronto won 3 of 4 in the regular season. Toronto had much better numbers in the clutch after the All-Star break. I mean, they were both pretty good, but in terms of defensive rating and net rating, but Philly went 2-3 at home after the All-Star break in clutch situations. Toronto went 4-2 on the road, had the 3rd best defensive rating, 4th best rebounding rate. And Philly's a bad rebounding team, especially if Embiid is not at full strength. They're going to be a terrible rebounding team. And so Toronto, with toughness all over the floor, length, and guys just crashing from all over the place, can come at you in a variety of ways. I just don't see Philly rolling the way they did in the first 2 games of the series. And Toronto, only shot 8 for 34 from 3 in that last game and still won. They're bound to do a little bit better there. They limited free throws. We talked about coming into this series and outshot them 35-25 in game 3. I think everyone will point at Scott Foster being the reason for that. But I mean, all Scott Foster ever really does is give superstars absolutely no benefit of the doubt. So if Embiid didn't shoot that many free throws and Pascal Siakam shot a lot, it's just because he's going out of his way to say fuck you to the superstars, but he's not in any way tipping the scales of these series. It's Toronto won because they were hungrier and deeper and faster, and I would not be shocked if they win this one again. Shout out to anybody who listened to us just throwing out that it was plus 1,400 for them to force 6 when they got down. Right. Because now they're looking at potentially doing that. You could still get plus 650 for them to force 7, or plus 900 for Philly to let this go to 7, but win 4-3. So just some interesting ways to still look at this series, because I don't think it's going to be easy for the Sixers, especially if they let this one slip.
Yeah, I concur. I do agree with you about James Harden. I do agree about the 7.5 points. I think that's a little bit of a slap in the face to the team that the Raptors are, and the fact that Embiid is a bit hurt, and Scotty Barnes gave them 26 minutes. He even tweaked the ankle again at one point, had to come back out and went back in. And so, you continue to love the kid's toughness and think if he played 26 minutes in the last game, he's got to be available for 26 in this one. And hit, a Scotty Barnes at 80% and a Joel Embiid at 80%, let's say, or whatever you want to limit him to with that finger. Now we're talking about a Toronto team with their backs against the wall, love being dogs, love needing to scrap and fight back as they did this entire second half of this NBA season, and really a little bit before the break too. So Nick Nurse and company, Nick Nurse is kind of the opposite in terms of, games where he's either elimination or closeout games. They didn't make the playoffs last season, so he didn't really have to hurt his record. And it's really good from that championship run on and the year before as well, even with DeMar and company, in his first season there. So I love Nick Nurse's ability to outcoach Doc in this one, to be honest, to continue to figure out ways to, honestly frustrate James Harden on offense. And I think Harden at times is playing a bit into, what Nick Nurse and company want him to do, which is dribble, 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 dribble. Obviously, they would prefer the step back three where he's just not hitting them at this point in his career. It doesn't seem like right now. He's lessened those to about 6 threes a game. In the playoffs, which is decent, but he's also playing into into what they want him to do, which is dribble, 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 and then as soon as you go, we've already got someone standing at the foul line waiting for you, because we don't really have the height anyway to meet you at the rim. We're going to stop you before you get there, and he's just doing his arm flailing stuff a little bit too much right now. So I don't know if he's got it in him to do that, but at least he still is someone that you are happy to give the keys of your offense to, if Joel Embiid's not going to be the primary target, which is exactly where I don't his game is going to be affected, is on offense, catching that ball in the post and then needing to go from there. That's not going to be what you see nearly as frequently in this game, I don't think. So while I wanted to really take Joel in a closeout game, in a game where if he had his full strengths, you could just say, all right, dump it down to him. Go ahead and get yours. Usage rate is super high. You expect those free throw attempts to continue to be about 11 or 12 for him, but it's just not what you rely on in this one. So I would look Harden assists and points. And then, 7.5 points. I don't know who's going to win this game necessarily, but I just cannot see the Raptors getting blown out like that in this one, as I think they will be a bit more prepared as they sort of, received a shock with Scotty Barnes going down right away in that first game. I think that was a really unplanned shock for them that led to them getting blown out in the first 2 games. And then also Tyrese Maxey playing way above his pay grade obviously has come back down to earth a bit. And I think you continue to expect that for a positive Raptors bet as well in terms of that plus 7.5.
Yeah, the money line's plus 265. I would say it's fair more in the plus 145 range for the Raptors. I'd say that's about how unlikely this win is. Closer to a toss-up in my mind. Because Embiid's not 100%, and it's not a shocker to look at his offensive rating, 110 in losses versus 123 in wins. Yeah. It was 92 in game 4 as he had 5 turnovers, and turnovers were the huge red flag we threw up before that game 4, saying, I think Toronto's going to force another one. And sure enough, once again, throwing the ball all over the place in the fourth quarter. Now, their last 2 games, the Sixers have the worst assist to turnover ratio, 0.6. So more turnovers and assists in the fourth quarter. And that's 21% of their possessions in the fourth are ending in a turnover. And that's against the team that I believe had the highest percentage of points off fast break points, loves to get out and run off your turnovers. If they continue to do that, they're in trouble. And it's going to be a little more predictable if it is Harden with that high usage rate. If it is Maxey, I don't like either of those guys to be super efficient, but I do like their props just because of I think the usage will be there. I don't think Embiid is going to be able to do what he normally does. And that's just going to galvanize a Raptors team that is the type of team that really to at least force a game 7 from getting down 3-0. Like this is in their DNA for sure. I'm excited to see what happens. I kind of hope just for the entertainment value that that we go back to Toronto for game 6 and see how much longer this goes.
It would be fun. Yeah. And the last thing I would say too is just mentioning that Matisse Thybulle coming back into the lineup where he wasn't able to play in Toronto does affect a few guys, specifically Tobias Harris and Tyrese Maxey. Danny Green was on the floor, obviously, in most of the Thybulle minutes in the last two games, really getting about 28 minutes or 30 minutes in both those games. Those minutes will go down, but you'll still see Tobias and Tyrese Maxey on the floor for the 38 to 40 that they've been playing. And those guys' stats went down a bit with Danny Green on the floor as he took 10 field goal attempts in game 4. He took 12 in game 3. And so, Tobias and Maxey were the ones who felt the brunt of those field goal attempts going down. Matisse Thybulle is not necessarily going to be pulling the same way that Danny Green was, or looking for his own shot the way that Danny Green was after a couple swings. So I think especially with Joel Embiid's usage probably dropping a bit and those guys both increasing, because that's the effect that Thybulle has when he's on the floor with them. You might consider going back to their props, which hopefully will be a little bit lower than they were after games 1 and 2, where they both had really, really good offensive outputs. All right, Nate, last game of the Monday night slate here that we've got for these playoffs rolling on here into the Western Conference. The 2-2 series we've got out there with the Jazz and the Mavs after the Mavs failed to take a 3-1 lead there with Luka back in Utah. So like we said, this thing is knotted back up. I don't know, plenty to like here, plenty to look at, I think, in terms of the fact that Luka has coming back, Luka playing at home, the sort of game theory that comes as a result of Luka being back. Now you're going to see probably a bit more Dwight Powell again, as Maxi Kleber could not contain Rudy actually in game 4 there. You've got Jalen Brunson, keeping his minutes and really being Luka's number 2, but now you got Dinwiddie coming off the bench and getting a few less minutes, which probably means a little bit less offense, more defense for the Mavs, and potentially an under. So where do you start with the angles in this game 5 tiebreaker, essentially?
Yeah, it's kind of strange. Even though it's -3, I kind of want to tease it to just get rid of the spread because the way that last game finished, I think this could also go down to the wire. I don't think the Jazz are folding just because the X's and O's played Rudy off the floor. I mean, kind of the theme of those games over the weekend was after guys getting disrespected or having a terrible game and getting talked about in the post game as they came back strong. And obviously a point of emphasis from Utah was getting the ball to Rudy and having him punish the other guy, getting Kleber off the floor, because Rudy, worked him in 18 minutes, and then it was Dwight Powell out there, and all of a sudden the Mavs' wonderful spacing is in trouble. Utah able to defend Dallas better actually when Luka's out there, because they're much slower. The pace, it's in the half court, that is specifically not necessarily the pace of the entire game, but there's less quick, decisive driving. Luka's more herky jerky. I guess he only had a 103 individual offensive rating, even though he had 30 points. It's just, I think it's just an adjustment period, though, that you might expect just after playing the way they did without him, reintegrating him now. Going to take a game. It still was a game that they were in until the very end because of their defense, because of their tenacity, and because they still are a more well put together team than the Jazz. They've been way hotter. They've been 36-12 since the start of January, and the Jazz are a team that I'm definitely willing to fade on the road, especially in clutch time after the All-Star break. On the road, -25 net rating, a 124 defensive rating. They went 1-6 in one possession games on the season, even though they just got this last one. Interestingly, on a lob from Donovan Mitchell to Rudy Gobert, right, which doesn't usually happen. Nice to see them work through some stuff there, but they just were so much better on at home versus on the road. Dallas was incredible at home post All-Star break, 8-1 with the best net rating overall in clutch time, and they went 3-0 in clutch games at home. They won 14 of their last 17 home games, allowed just 101 points per game in that span. I'm a little scared off betting totals again. And now that we move back to Dallas, it seems like the under is just as likely. I think as much as I think Dallas is going to win this game, I do think they're going to win the series. And if you're late to betting it, I don't think you take the -130 series line at this point. You can take Mavs in 6 at +300 And you can even hedge it with Mavs and 7 at plus 180. And I think that's overall better odds than just taking them straight up to win the series. So there's no other scenario in which they win. If you combine those two bets, you're getting yourself better odds. I don't know how you feel. If they win this game, do you think they're going back to Utah to close out, or do you think this is going the distance?
I think my number one rule when it comes to clutch situations, playoff situations, needing to get into the playoffs is fade the Jazz when it comes, especially the playoffs. So I was very fond of your plus 230 bet on the Mavs before this series started because they were just getting disrespected as though they couldn't win without Luka, and all they needed to do was win probably one game without Luka for him to come back and then still be in the series. They were leading the series when he came back. But yeah, he was always going to need a game, not just him, but the team was going to need a game. And to help your point along about, his offensive rating was only 104 just because of some of the inefficiencies and 4 turnovers and whatever. But he still had a great 52-40 from the field, 100 from the line. And he impacted the game. He controlled the game. He was, it's interesting. He wasn't the reason for their third quarter spurt where they went, they had 177 offensive rating in that third quarter. And really, even got the total up closer to those. For those of us who took the under, we started to get a little bit scared. But still managed to prevail. And I would say, what's interesting here is I like I was fine with a money line under parlay here in this one for the Mavs. But I'm not, I'm not going to be scared. I'm either going to tease it or I'm just going to take both of the line and the total and parlay them together and get about my, plus 260 on my money there, because I do feel like if they win this game, 3 points isn't really anything to scare me off. Despite that, I do, see it as probably a close game, because while I was starting with fade the Jazz, I mean, they it's not like they can't do, come win this series. It's not like they aren't as good almost as the Mavs, just maybe not their lineup, but when you talk about the ceiling of what they can get from the players that they have, if they play, as well as they can, then they are, good enough to either win this game or keep it close. But I do like, the other thing I would do is the teaser that you said, because if I do like the Mavs to win this game, and I do like, I kind of had this total probably at 216 is what I thought it was going to come out at. So 213, and I was hoping to bet under that. So if I can get it back up to about 217 and tease that with, basically a Mavs money line, now they're +1 essentially. I'd feel really good about that, because now I'm looking at least, at getting closer to even money on that bet there than the -150 if I wanted just the money line for them. So I do like the Mavs to win. I do like there to be less points in this one, just because the Mavs at home, that defense is it's wildly good right now. And I think Rudy will be able to stay on the floor, which will mean Dwight Powell is on the floor, which will mean less 3-point shooting for those Mavs.
Yeah, I do think there is a scenario where the Mavs cruise to a win here. I mean, I just don't have much faith in the Jazz on the road. I think, after that initial game 2 loss, we were talking about Mike Conley going scoreless and where the other options are going to come from. And sure, Donovan Mitchell didn't have a great offensive game. They still won that last time out, but Dallas has shown an ability to hold him in check. And with that gargantuan usage rate he posts in the playoffs, like you always talk about, if he's not going to be efficient, Utah is going to struggle to score. Same clutch numbers I talked about on the road since the All-Star break. They have a 98 offensive rating. It's because it's all Donovan Mitchell. And they got a huge lift from Jordan Clarkson, who does have some pretty notable home road splits this season. He's shooting under 40%, under 29% from 3 on the road. I don't think he's going to have that same type of success in Dallas. I don't think that Dallas is going to get the same kind of zero production from Spencer Dinwiddie, who, he had to really adjust. He's making the biggest adjustment here. I mean, Jalen Brunson, not the man anymore, but Dinwiddie now is being a sixth man and being a third banana, a third playmaker. So, I think those guys will gel back into their roles. Jason Kidd will find out a way to get his spacing better and start burning the Jazz from 3, which Dallas was just incredible from 3 at home. In their last 8 at home, I think 7 of those went over, and they were hitting about 16 threes per game. That is how they took the 2-1 series lead, of course, spreading out Utah, burning them from 3. And I think as long as they hit a better mark from deep, they're gonna win this game and go on to win the series.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would consider potentially Reggie Bullock as well because we saw him, his minutes just continue to stay up and rise. He led the team in minutes in that last game just because he's basically their best, defender on some of those other smaller players that he needs to guard. You mentioned Jordan Clarkson and Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell. Those are the three guys he's guarding the most, especially Clarkson, who I do think they're going to continue to need on the floor for the 36 to 40 minutes he's been playing in this series. As like you said, there's just not that much offense outside of Donnie Mitchell in terms of creation. So just banking, looking at guys to hit with their props because of some of the game theory that leads to who's going to be playing the most. And I think that's what, you look at a guy like Reggie Bullock, who's going to continue to be needed on defense, which means he'll continue to be, the recipient of those passes into the corner where he's also, I think 3 or 4 threes is a reasonable thing to bet on for him in this game as he's had 8 attempts in his last 2 games. So some other stuff to look at there, but that is all the time we have for you guys in this one. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Got all 3 game videos up for you as we continue to bring you each and every playoff game with a game video, as well as those player props we continue to bring you as well. So until we see you next, happy betting.